So, greetings. My name is Annie Minguez Garcia. I am a vice president at Good Shepherd Services, and today we are talking about ranked choice voting. We have the pleasure of welcoming Jody Morales, who will shortly introduce herself, to share with us what is ranked choice voting, how do we take advantage of ranked choice voting, and what dates are important for us as we look forward to electing members of the city offices that are coming up in June next month. So, Jody, without any further ado, I'll pass it to you and welcome you. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for that introduction. So again, my name is Jody Morales. I'm here to speak with you about ranked choice voting. I did a little presentation. I'm a visual learner, so it's easier for me and for some people to see things as I'm speaking. So I hope that you'll enjoy the presentation and that it'll be helpful to you as we approach June. So again, the focus of this conversation is what you need to know about ranked choice voting for our next elections. To introduce myself further, my name is Jody Morales. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney since 2007. I'm also the Bronx Democratic Commissioner for the Board of Elections for the City of New York. As I mentioned, I started my career as a lawyer, but specifically as a public defender. And within that capacity, I represented thousands of people in the Bronx, and also served as a supervisor within the Bronx Defenders, and I worked in the Juvenile Defense Project there. So lots of experience doing community work, which is why I was excited to join you all and talk about this, particularly with this group who does such incredible work for the community. Um, I became the Bronx Democratic Commissioner in 2022, and I've proudly served in that role since then. So a lot of what I do is talks like this, informing the community, making sure that the elections are certified properly, and, joining efforts to enfranchise voters. So that's why I'm talking to you guys today. So before we get into the sort of, mechanics of ranked choice voting, I thought it would be interesting to give you a very, very brief history of what ranked choice voting looked like and how we got to where we are. So first, the city adopted ranked choice voting in 1936 when the United States was recovering from the Great Depression and citizens all over the world were facing the rise of totalitarianism. So, the times were very uncertain. Reformers were looking for representation as a way to ensure that the interests of local citizens were being met. And at that time, the biggest barrier was the first past the post electoral system. Okay. So now moving into sort of the next phase, between the height of the Depression and the end of World War II, New Yorkers reshaped democracy in the nation's largest city in a time of massive political, social, and economic turmoil. So they tried to embrace the future of American democracy by enhancing representation of a diverse city in body and mind. Enhancing representation was mostly a new idea or a novel idea at the time, and it's one that was showing up in the Big Apple and elsewhere, but it was still something sort of new. Flash forward to November of 2019, New York City voters overwhelmingly approved ranked choice voting again for future municipal elections. So in essence, in 2019, this is the second time New York City turned to ranked choice voting. So now what is ranked choice voting? Ranked choice voting is an electoral system that allows people to vote for multiple candidates in your order of preference. So instead of just choosing who you want to win, you fill out the ballot saying who's your first choice, second choice, or third choice, or more as needed for each position. So the candidate with the majority, more than 50% of first choice votes, wins outright. If no candidate gets a majority of first choice votes, then it triggers a new counting system. The candidate who did the worst is eliminated, and that candidate's voters' ballots are redistributed to their second choice pick. In other words, if you ranked a losing candidate as your first choice and the candidate is eliminated, then your vote still counts. It just moves to your second choice vote. And that process continues until there's a candidate who has the majority of the votes. So again, just in a briefer, more succinct way, I'd like to explain how the elimination process works. So again, if a candidate receives the majority of the first place votes, that means over 50%, in the first round, they win. That's it. However, if in the first round, no candidate receives above 50%, the candidate with the fewest votes would be eliminated. And again, this process is repeated until a candidate wins a majority of votes cast. So now I just want to take it back to sort of, what ranked choice voting is, right? We just talked about how this process is different from, let's say when we do an election for president where ranked choice voting hasn't been approved. So what I have here is that in comparison, the US federal government and most American states and cities currently use what's known as the plurality system. The candidate with the highest number of votes wins, period. It doesn't matter whether that candidate earned the majority of the vote. Again, in a ranked choice voting system, it works differently. The winning candidate almost always ends up with a majority of the votes, even if some portion of the electorate selected him or her as a second or third choice. So that's just kind of like to compare and contrast. And again, practically speaking, ranked choice voting is optional for primary and special elections. Again, it gives you the opportunity to rank candidates in order of preference, first, second, third, etc., instead of choosing just one candidate. So if your first choice doesn't win, your second choice might. When you're filling out your ballot, you're going to see a list of candidates and columns with ovals going straight down. It's really important to mark no more than one oval in each column, and you'll get a better understanding of what I'm saying when I show you the next slide. So here's a sample sort of ballot. We have Sally, John, Leslie, Demetrius, Aaron, Tamara, and Janelle. Those are our candidates. Then the ballot here lists choices 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Again, you can rank or choose up to 5 candidates on this ballot, right? So on this particular ballot, if we're looking line by line, Demetrius, he's our first choice. Our second choice is Tamara. Our third choice is John. Sally is our fourth, and and Leslie is our fifth, right? So if you notice, Aaron and Janelle were not selected because we can only choose up to 5. You have the option though, right, not to choose 5. If you want to choose just one candidate, that's fine. In this example, you see Demetrius was the only person chosen. It's also very important to note that you should not rank a candidate more than once. So in other words, you're marking no more than one oval in each column. This is an example of what not to do because Leslie has been ranked twice, first as the first choice and second as the second choice. That's what we do not want to do. Remember, we're just picking up to 5 and it's one circle per column. Or just one candidate if you don't want to rank up to 5. So here's just some really important information about dates, the registration deadlines. The last date to register to vote in person is June 14th. Applications to register to vote by mail must be received by June 14th. And if you, just as an FYI, if you move to a different address or make any changes to your voter registration application, you must fill out a new voter registration with the updated information. And I listed the Board of Elections website at the bottom, just so that it's a resource for more information if you have questions. And I thought it would be interesting. I know that the focus of this conversation was ranked choice voting, but I'm pretty sure that we're at a place where we sort of understand what we should be doing at the ballots. So I thought that it would be important to talk about some other things that may come up for first-time voters or voters who aren't fully apprised of all of the different options that we have. So I'm just taking this opportunity to talk about absentee voting. So just so everyone is aware, any registered voter may apply for an absentee ballot in case you are not able to vote in person. Keep in mind, if you have been issued an absentee ballot, you will not be able to cast a ballot at your polling site. However, you can vote by affidavit. So you have the option of mailing back your absentee ballot or dropping it at a polling site during operation hours at your local borough office. Okay, and then if you need to apply for an absentee ballot, there's a request.ballot.vote.nyc website that gives you all of the information and the ways to register, or excuse me, to request the absentee ballot. Um, Again, the last day to apply online is June 14th. You may still apply in person at your County Board of Elections office through June 23rd of 2025. And again, of course, it's always important to fill out the absentee application form correctly and make sure to sign and date the application. You're supposed to sign and date on the outside of the security envelope, place the security envelope in the return envelope, and seal the return envelope. You do not need postage for this. You just drop it in the mailbox. Another thing that I thought it was important to remind everyone of is that early voting starts on June 14th and lasts until June 22nd. You must vote at your assigned early voting site, but please note, everyone, that your early voting site may be different from your election day poll site. So you're going to have to make sure if you're choosing to vote during this period, that you're going to the correct place. The primary election early voting dates again are June 14th through June 22nd. But, sometimes folks go in on June 23rd and think that they can do early voting. They cannot. If it's June 23rd, it's too late for early voting. You're going to have to wait until the 24th, election day. And again, at the bottom is a helpful link to find your poll site. Again, you'll be able to find your poll sites for the early voting period as well as for election day. And so election day is June 24th. The hours where the polls are going to be open is 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. This time around, you're voting for mayor, public advocate, comptroller, borough president, city council, district attorney, and Supreme Court and civil court judges. Okay, those are the folks that are going to be on your ballot. But please note that the specific offices on your ballot do depend on where you live and which political party you belong to. And so sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, especially for first-time voters. You don't know what to expect. So I thought that this would be helpful for those of you who don't know what it's like at your poll site. First, when you walk into a poll site, your poll worker will show you where to sign in. They're going to look up in their list of registered voters and check your signature before they hand you the ballot. So they're checking the list of registered voters to make sure that your name is in that list and to make sure that your signature aligns with that record. Pro tip, if you received a fast pass in the mail from the Board of Elections, bring it with you for a faster check-in. It's just a little piece of plastic. It looks like a circle with a barcode. And if you have it, you bring it with you, they scan it, and it just makes the check-in a lot faster. Okay. You won't need to show an ID unless you're a first-time voter and you didn't provide a DMV or a social security number when you register to vote. So just be aware of that. So then after you've been registered, you've checked in, the next step is actually voting. So you're going to mark your ballot by completely filling in the oval next to your choice. If you make a mistake or have a question about your ballot, just ask a poll worker for help. They're there to help you. You shouldn't be scared or worried. They're more than happy to assist, and mistakes happen all of the time. And then, of course, when you're voting, make sure to check both sides of the ballot so you don't miss anything. Sometimes there are things on the second page, and folks just don't turn it over, and you miss an opportunity to be heard. And then finally, once you're done filling out your ballot, a poll worker is going to help you insert the ballot into the scanner, and the scanner is going to let you know when your vote is in. So that's just the process. It's very easy to do. And again, there are poll workers at every poll site. If there's any sort of question or any sort of doubt, you should definitely find one of them and make sure that all of your questions are answered. And that's sort of the end of my presentation. Again, these are some helpful resources I listed throughout the presentation. So vote.nyc is the Board of Elections site. NewYorkCityVotes.org is another site that will give you a lot of information that's pertinent to voting and early voting in particular. The third site that I've listed is the Request My Ballot website, where again, if you need to do absentee vote from an absentee ballot, you can request it there. And then it has the option to give you like a tracking number to figure out where your request is in case you're not receiving it as quickly as you expect. And then the last website, Find My Poll site, is pretty self-explanatory, but this is the site that I referenced a few moments ago, so that you're certain that you're going to the correct place for early voting versus election day voting. Um, so that's kind of it. It was a very general overview. I hope that it was helpful to everyone. And if there are any questions I can answer, I will do my best.
Thank you so much, Jody. It's so helpful to have it all in one place. And I appreciate you also having like a call to action to us to ensure that this message gets out to as many community members as possible so that we have good turnout in this election. There's two questions in the chat. So where can I find who I am voting for in this election?
So, there's actually, you might have gotten it in the mail if there was a voter guide that went out maybe a few days ago. And that voter guide has literally every candidate that you could be possibly looking at during these primaries. If you cannot find that particular, the hard copy of that, if you go on nycvotes.org, you'll have a list there.
And then another question, because you mentioned that first-time voters might need to show ID. Will a first-time voter need a real ID license or identification to vote?
So I don't know if a real ID is required. I think any sort of state issued identification is sufficient. There hasn't been any information disseminated that says a real ID is required. I think it's just a matter of the, poll workers being able to uh, confirm that you are the person who's casting the vote.
You showed us a ballot, and if you wanted to maybe just go
Yeah.
to it, the one that has like how to.
Hmm.
Um, if some of us we are, many of us are in community at community events, would it be helpful to what visuals would be helpful if we're trying to explain ranked choice voting?
So do you mean like where can you find a visual or?
Yeah, where could we find a visual and what would be the best? Is it this one? And because this one was really like self-explanatory, but is there any ones that you recommend that we share with folks?
Yeah. So again, the hard copy of the voter guide that went out has like the perfect example of a ballot. It also has almost like a practice ballot so that you can, make sure that you're doing this right before you put your pencil to paper at the polls. But if you wanted to go online, if you go to New York City Votes, there should be a sample ballot there. But you don't have to just go to that website. There are so many examples and so many resources out there. As long as you do a general search for a sample ranked choice ballot, you're going to get a visual image. This is, like you said, very self-explanatory, but in my experience as a voter, and when the first time I did have to vote with a ranked choice ballot, it wasn't confusing at all. They've, put it together in such a way where it's pretty easy to understand. But again, if you have any doubts or have any questions, just ask a poll worker and they'll walk you through it. They are all very well trained and informed.
So quite another question we have is, do you know of any upcoming workshops that we can advertise to the community about ranked choice voting?
So I don't know of a specific workshop for ranked choice voting, but I know that you can see what the candidates are putting on their platform to sort of help you navigate, who to choose. I'm looking up the specific site. I may have to email it to you. Oh, actually, it's also on the NewYorkCityVotes.org site. So there you can search what the candidates' platforms are, and also find additional information that is particularly helpful to you. But I don't know of like a specific date for a workshop that's coming up. Sorry, I'll try to find one and get back to you.
Does anyone else have any other questions? You can get yourself off mute. We're a good group.
I have a question. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you,
Hello.
Jody, for a really informative presentation. I may have missed this at the beginning. So I work with youth that are formerly homeless,
Okay.
and so they're only with us for up to 2 years.
Mhm.
Um, how would you recommend us approaching getting a young person in my program registered to vote for the first time? Is it too late?
No, it's not too late to register. I think the easiest way would, I mean, you have like the paper registration forms that you can get at the post office. You can come to the Board of Elections office. We're at 1780 Grand Concourse. And I believe you can even register online. So there are plenty of ways to get that done.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Jody, they just need a physical address to register.
Yes.
But if let's just say, for example, in Pascal's situation, like we may have a young person who leaves before like June 24th or during
Mhm.
that time. And what does it matter? They can they still vote even if they are no longer living at our site, but they already
Well,
registered.
Well, they can update their address.
Okay.
They should update their address. And that's a pretty simple process of just going to the borough office and making sure that the new address is recorded.
And Jody, you mentioned 1780 Grand Concourse. That's for the Bronx office.
Mhm.
Where can we find the offices for all of the boroughs? Is that also on Vote? Uh,
Yeah. Vote.nyc will have all of the borough offices. It'll have the phone numbers, everything that you could possibly need to know.
any other questions? Okay. That said, we want to thank you so much for tuning in on our workshop around ranked choice voting in New York City 101 with Jody Morales. Thank you so much, Jody, for your time tonight. And thank
you.
everyone else for watching. Don't forget, vote this year, June
Yes.
24th. Vote, vote, vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.